We've not done a Stoppard at TCR, so this is pretty exciting. And it's sort of an epic play that spans 20 plus years of Czech history, really, from the Prague Spring to the Velvet Revolution.
It's a very smart script.
Essentially, two stories that sort of blend together. There's Jan, who's a young Czech student who studies at Cambridge University, with a professor who has devoted his whole life to communism.
Max is this crusty British professor who is a member of the Communist Party, and he is a very hardline Marxist.
And then the young Czech student goes back to Czechoslovakia in 1968 and to discover that communism is not panning out the way he thought it would.
The first scene, Jan is leading to go back to Czechoslovakia because the Soviets have just rolled tanks into Prague. And so he's going back to try and do what he can to preserve the freedoms that he holds dearest, namely the freedom to have rock and roll.
And continues to visit with his professor, arguing and debating the pros and cons of communism.
Little by little, he's peeling away all the things that Max believes in, and it's very frustrating to Max to watch this happen.
So he goes back to save rock and roll, and then the Soviets gradually clamp down more and more and more, and more of their freedoms are taken away. The situation becomes more perilous for him and also for his friend Ferdinand.
Ferdinand is Jan's best friend. He's fighting the opposition. He's a rebel, but then he gets thrown in a jail, and he comes back and he has a different opinion now. He's a lot more scared.
And then you trace through the 70s as it gets worse and worse and worse for them, and the threat of prison becomes very real.
So that by the end of the play, in the early 90s, the English professor discovers that perhaps his ideals aren't practical and that they won't work. So a lifetime's worth of work maybe didn't pan out.
Act 1, I play a lady named Eleanor, and she is a professor. Their lives turn upside down because Eleanor has cancer.
His only child is this very unusual daughter, Esme, and Jan is intellectual. He's really everything that Max would want in a son, and I think he just is not willing to lose that. He cares about him deeply. It's very much a father-son relationship that Max does not want to let go of.
Then in Act 2, I actually play our grown-up daughter, Eleanor and Max's grown-up daughter, and her name is Esme.
It's very dramatic. I love a studio theater show like this because it really challenges the viewer. It's a very different kind of theater from the musicals.
I think that if people get into coming to the Linge series, they'll continue to come again.
It is contemporary, but I think for an American audience, it's shocking that it's only been 20 years that there was a communist occupation of these Eastern European countries. And so, we've been working with a visiting professor at Mount Mercy College who's from the Czech Republic, who was a strike organizer during the Velvet Revolution in the 80s, Dr. Libor Prager. He's been an invaluable resource.
He's also helping with the Czech dialogue.
He's a dialect coach because we have Czech characters in the play, and that's not an accent that's done a lot. So he's helped us with the dialect, but he's also put it into a European context. When we do this play, we're filtering it through our American sensibilities. He is a direct route to European sensibilities, which are different than ours.
There were harsh times, and people should know about them so they can learn from the mistakes from the past.
Rock and roll is a strange title, admittedly, but the young Czech student has no desire to get involved in politics. His passion is American rock and roll.
The rock and roll represents the new revolution, throwing aside the communist dictatorships.
I'm from Romania, and I was only 2 years old when the revolution took place. We brought down communism, but communism still exists. So growing up, I heard a lot of stories from my parents, and they're very similar to what's happening in the play, which was what attracted me first when I read the play.
I just think it's an amazing show, and every rehearsal I find more things in it, and it's just, it's just such a privilege to get to work with this cast and to play this part. It's just an amazing part and an amazing character, and I'm having a ball with it.
I think it's going to be fantastic.
We're lucky to get to work at stuff we love.